Find the cost of freedom buried in the ground. Mother Earth will swallow you. Lay your body down. These words, sung by Crosby, Stills, and Ash, echoed in my head all week long as we reflected on the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. And 3 civilians shot, leaving Fire Chief Corey Cantor dead, and David Dutch and James Copenhaver seriously injured. Regardless of your politics, you no doubt watched in horror as the chaos unfolded. So let me start by asking a question for all of us to consider. Where do we find the cost of freedom? Is it in the brave men and women who give their lives to protect ours? Is it in the police officers and Secret Service agents who run toward gunfire when most of us run away? Is it in the graves of those soldiers, known and unknown? Is it in the grass that feeds off the tears of those broken-hearted mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters who come to visit those graves? What is the price we must pay for transfers of power? What is the cost of having a system of government that allows people to speak freely? A country that allows people to open their mouths with words of hate and disdain for entire groups of people. A nation that embraces our right to individualism, regardless of how absurd and how obscene it may seem to others. Where do we find the cost of freedom? Is that freedom a curse or a blessing? In this week's Torah portion, we read the story of Bilam, a prophet sent by Balak, the Moabite king, to curse the Israelites in an attempt to break them and bring them down. Believing the Israelites have grown too mighty, Balak sends Bilam to spew words of curse and hate. By now, you may know how the story plays out. Instead of cursing the Israelites, Balaam can only offer words of blessing and praise. In fact, he looks out over the hills and sees the tents of the Israelites, and he cries out, "Ma tovhu o alecha Yaakov, how goodly are your tents." Then he continues, "No harm is in sight for Jacob, no woe in view for Israel. Like palm groves that stretch out, like gardens beside a river, like cedars beside the water." Balaam's mouth can only offer words of holiness. The Israelites and the Jews, and we as Americans, are no strangers to fighting for freedom, to holding on, to the need to hold on to blessings. Many have tried to curse us, and many have failed. And in each generation, the resolve to combat hateful rhetoric only grows stronger, and we become more united in our pursuit of a more just world. The Torah portion and in the aftermath of this week's assassination attempt point us to a fundamental truth. The words we choose matter. Words can shift an existing paradigm. Just as Bilam's curse turned into blessings and words of unity, we saw this week how finally former President Trump and President Biden sounded like a parliamentarian who understood that the power of their words, that the words they choose can in fact shift the tone, and the temperature in our country. People who sounded like they finally understood that the power of their words reflect on an entire nation. We live in a country that protects the rights and freedoms of free and fair elections and bloodless transfers of power. You know, this week marks the beginning of a period known as the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av. This period in our history marks several solemn and sad events culminating with the destruction of the temple, the Beit HaMikdash. And the rabbis of antiquity believed that what ultimately led to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash was baseless hatred, meaning the devaluation of human life, the dissolving infrastructure of humanity, and the inability to communicate words of positivity and love. So let us, on this Shabbat, remember to hold on to the blessings that we have, to choose words that empower others, and to be grateful to live in a country that still holds firm in its belief that freedom is worth the cost. Find the cost of freedom buried in the sand. Mother Earth will swallow you. Lay your body down. Shabbat Shalom.